Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Victory Green Hour as the Eagles defeat the Buffalo Bills 13-12 for their third consecutive victory, and they will be at least the 3 seed heading into the playoffs in a couple of weeks. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, what's going on, man?
Man, I'm still shocked that the football season's almost over. Like, we waited so long for this, and those first 17 weeks just flew by, and the next, 5 weeks are probably going to fly by even quicker. It's crazy, and we're going to get into this game, but I mean,
Football
I'll
season
just say that.
Football season always goes by way too quick, while all the other sports drag on and nobody really cares about the other sports. And and then it takes forever to get to training camp, preseason, and then eventually the regular season. I apologize, my dog was barking for some weird reason. I don't know why. I don't know if you can hear her, but she's down there barking. Nobody else is down there with her, so she shouldn't be, but here we are. All right, so we are going to jump into this game, and I'm going to try to talk over the dog while she barks, goes on her little temper tantrum right now. But as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54. And follow the Eagles Pinpull Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pinpull Network. And let us know your thoughts in the chat if you're joining us live on the game. It wasn't pretty, but look, they got the win. Josh Allen has yet to still defeat the Philadelphia Eagles, the only team besides the Bills, obviously, that he has yet to defeat. But, Connor, before we jump into the game, Dallas actually made a move today, releasing Trayvon Diggs. There are a couple different notes going on out there about why they did it. Apparently, after the game on Christmas Day, he asked to stay behind in Washington. It's from where he's around. He wanted to spend the holidays with the family, and on multiple occasions they told him no, and he kind of just asked for his release, and it was kind of a mutual parting of ways. Now, the Eagles traded for Jair Alexander. They tried to claim Darius Slay. This might be a move that Howie would consider. Now, I know it's a rather large price tag. I think for just this last week, it's over like $450,000 or something like that. If he were to be claimed, or they could potentially try to negotiate with him if nobody claims him. What are your thoughts on the Eagles potentially claiming or going after Trayvon Diggs?
I mean, I'd be open to it. I think it would be, a good idea. If no one wants to take on that price tag, I think we currently are rolling over a pretty significant cap number as is. I understand why they're rolling over the cap number that they're rolling over, but to the same point, to take on $500,000 worth of, dead cap, and we know Trayvon Diggs, he can have his big games. He can, he can struggle at times and give up some big plays, and we know that he struggles in those moments. But I guess the question would be, has there been enough faith restored and put into Adoree Jackson that they trust Adoree Jackson to carry them through the playoffs, or do they want the chance to have Trayvon Diggs on roster for the playoffs and then negotiate things in the offseason to figure out how to manage the contract that he's under, which obviously we know that Howie Roseman can easily figure those things out. I mean, I would probably take the shot there. But do you rock the boat on a defense that's already as good as the Eagles' defense is? It's tough to say, but Trayvon Diggs at least would stabilize the CB2 spot for you next year, because do you bring Adoree Jackson? Do you revisit the CB2 spot again like we've done for 2 or 3 straight off seasons? This could at least somewhat solidify the CB2 spot, and Trayvon Diggs would be among people who he'd be closer to home for one. And also, hopefully, he'd be among men who can really get him to respect and buy into the culture and the team. I don't think that that's so much there in Dallas, and you see it among some of the players who have struggled with their we'll call it attitudes in Dallas.
So he obviously wouldn't have to be the number one corner here. That's Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, and obviously having Cooper DeJean in the slot, like, he can come here and just kind of fill a spot. Like you mentioned, it's tough because Adoree Jackson is playing well now. Is he the end all be all? No. But you're going to be playing better teams, better receiving corps in the playoffs. As of right now, the Rams would be coming to Philly, and that's Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. So like, and just think about it, like Jackson Smith and Jigba's out there. Just trying to think. San Francisco's receiving corps. I mean, they got Kittle, and they have McCaffrey. Their receivers are okay, Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall. But like again, he wouldn't have to go out there and cover the number one receiver because Q would do that. And like he can kind of be that of the ball hawking nature. And obviously, this defense is a lot better than Dallas. Vic Fangio is a lot better defensive coordinator, than Matt Eberflus. So it would be interesting. I am intrigued. Like, and again, I'm pretty sure he played with Jalen at Alabama, Schmitty at Alabama. So like he has familiarity with certain players on the team. I also think like another team to watch out would be the Chicago Bears. Al Harris is their secondaries coach. He was also the secondary coach in Dallas, so he has experience there. Green Bay, because of Micah Parsons. Now I know Micah's hurt, but like Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs were close in Dallas, and obviously when Parsons got traded, that's when things started going downhill for Diggs in Dallas. So like there are teams out there that can consider it. He wants to go to a playoff team, and the Bears are obviously in the playoffs. The Packers are in the playoffs. Just trying to quickly think if anybody else, maybe the Bills. Again, they tried to claim they claimed Darius Slay too. So there are teams out there that could potentially do it. Obviously the money situation is key. Who wants to pay that? But I will. It'll be interesting to see over the next 24 to 48 hours if anybody does, and if they don't, what's he going to want to do? And we'll see what happens. But I'm like, being an Alabama fan, I watched him at Alabama when he was in college. I hated him. Obviously hated that he was a Cowboy, and he had that one season where he had 11, 12 picks or whatever it was. We'll see what happens, and it would be nice to have that depth because again, Adoree can kind of he's been playing good, but he can also go the totally wrong direction in the split of it, in the split the flick of it, whatever the in the split second. So we'll see what happens, but I figured I'd bring that up because that happened today, and we'll see what happens.
And it's a fair thing to bring up because, I'd be shocked to see him clear waivers. I understand that the financials are an issue. And I think when somebody's waived, if you take them on, you take on their guarantees that remain in the contract. Whereas if he goes full through waivers and is released, then the Cowboys take on the guarantees and then you get to renegotiate a contract, but then you're going up against 31 other teams. And, Trayvon Diggs is proven and established in as much as we've picked at him. He's proven and established in the NFL. I don't think he's a CB1 to the degree that the Dallas Cowboys felt he was, but I do believe that he could definitely be a CB2 and definitely would fit very well across from Q and near Cooper DeJean in the slot. And so, I mean, I'd be shocked to see him clear waivers because someone might want to take advantage of this opportunity, fix the contract that's at hand, and figure out how to move some money around. But I mean, there is a lot of money there, and it is late in the season. And do you want to take that shot and then have to worry about it in the off season? Because it's not something that you would pick him up and worry about now. You would have to worry about in the off season. So it'll be interesting to see if there's anyone who claims him. Obviously, waiver wire works in reverse stand-in order. So the Eagles would probably be right around the middle of the road, and there'd be a lot of teams ahead of them that might consider it. But
they might be 23 or 24, something like that.
Exactly. And some of these rebuilding teams, I mean, could consider, but like you got to remember the culture aspect of it.
He did come out and say he wants to be in the playoffs. So
it could end up similar to the Darius Slay thing where the Buffalo Bills took him on and he clearly had an intention in mind when being released and he didn't get where he wanted. So he's just fine being like, I'm probably going to retire. I feel like you could end up in a similar situation with Diggs.
I don't think any team that's not in the playoffs will do it because of it's one game left in the year. and his contract situation. So I think he's probably going to pass waivers just because of that hefty price tag, and then that's where the fun in games can begin, and we'll see where he ends up.
And before we get into a big country joining us, he says, let's trade Kevin Patullo. It's too late in the season, man. We're stuck with them. Let's face it, we're stuck with whatever this offense is, and we're going to dive into it. And then he says Adoree has played well when he's not 15 yards away. I mean, it's very difficult for like PFF and these other groups who try and gauge the closest receiver, but I think Adoree Jackson's statistics are not as high as they should be. I've seen Adoree Jackson who should be more responsible for some of the plays, but he isn't. And I understand why, because he wasn't the closest corner or the closest DB to the situation. And then he's the one who misses a tackle that turns into like this plus 30 gain for the other team or whatever. I think his stats are a little deflated compared to what they should be, but he has played much better. He's definitely been getting a lot better. So, and we'll dive into the other comments as we get into this game, LJ. So take us away.
Yeah. So the Eagles defeated the Bills 13-12. The first drive they came out in a torrential downpour. They decided to throw the ball 3 times. Shocker. Like they try to outsmart everybody else. They were finally able to figure it out. Jalen getting the ball to Devon, or getting the ball to AJ. AJ went over 1,000 yards. And then throwing the touchdown pass to Dallas Goedert, who set a franchise record for most touchdown receptions by a tight end with 11 in franchise history. So Dallas, and remember in the offseason, like the Eagles were going to release him, potentially trade him, and they were able to bring him back on a reduced contract. And, you know, who knows where this offense, which isn't that good, would be without a Dallas Goedert. With the 11 touchdowns, he's been their best red zone weapon. It seems like all the creative plays in the red zone are for Goedert, but they can't seem to do anything creative when it comes to AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. Who the hell knows why? But, you know, again, I'm not saying it's Scott Loeffler, but, you know, people saw what he did with Harold Fanning Jr. at Bowling Green. You know, being able to find creative ways to get him in the ball. Maybe that's where his input comes into play on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, like the first half, the offense seemed to work. I know they only scored 13 points. But like they were still able to move the ball, and obviously the defense being as great as it is, it's crazy that, like, I know we talked about it in the offseason that they lost TJGJ, they lost Darius Slay, they lost Milton Williams, Josh Sweat. They lost a lot of guys, and this defense isn't as good as last year's, but it's right there. Like, this is a really, really good defense, and they were able to hold Josh Allen and this Buffalo Bills offense, which averages close to 30 points a game, to 12. And they didn't score for the first 55 minutes of the game. That, like, just what Vic Fangio has been able to do with this defense, with all the pieces that he has, you know, with guys in and out. You know, Nakobe Dean was out for a long time, then out this week. Jalen Carter out for the last three-ish weeks. And not a great CB2, not a CB2 that he even wanted. Let's be honest. If you remember his comments over the in the preseason and the offseason, but like what he's been able to do with this defense is astounding. And like, I know that he said Fangio has said this is his last stop. Hopefully he coaches for another couple of years. And I remember last year, you know, after the first couple, the Buccaneers game, I said, man, maybe this game has just passed him by. It was either the Falcons or Buccaneers game, but like he might be better than Jim Johnson. And Jim Johnson was a hell of a defensive coordinator for the Eagles. And, you know, Vic Fangio he's the godfather of the defense, as everybody said. You know, they tried to get, you know, obviously Jonathan Gannon, somebody who kind of does what he runs this similar defense, Sean Desai and whatnot. But if it wasn't for, you know, Fangio, this team who knows where this team would be right now. They definitely wouldn't be, you know, 11-5 and on their way to the playoffs.
No chance. I mean, it's you can't understate how important Vic Fangio has been to this team and to why the development of some of these defensive players has occurred the way that it has occurred. Like you spoke to some of the names, like the fact that you can just, you lose a piece like Nakobe Dean, who we started to feel that loss in the Washington game, and it felt like, oh no, here we go. What are we going to do without Nakobe Dean? You don't have that blitz and presence. The run defense was looking like returning to what it was, a few weeks prior when we weren't able to stop a whole lot. And then you had Jahad Campbell step in, play 71 out of 76 snaps, and he had an absolutely amazing game there. He had 2 pressures, he had 7 tackles, 4 of them for stops. They tried to target him on 4 occasions, and he didn't give up anything in coverage. He had some he was really good. Jalen Phillips has been a massive acquisition. I know there's a lot of people already talking about it. We don't like to think to the offseason until the offseason because we still got very meaningful football still to play. But Jalen Phillips is someone you probably really need to consider if you're Howie, keeping him around because of how much of a turnaround this defense had as soon as he came into the fold. I understand Nakobe Dean also came into the fold, which could speak volumes to maybe Jalen Phillips and Nakobe Dean are the guys that are in, and maybe a guy like Nolan Smith might be an odd man out. Jalix Hunt's development's been meteoric compared to, what we thought he would be. There's at times where we've questioned it, but he's definitely, when he needs to step up in games like this game, he had a massive game. Marcus Epps, Andrew Makuba went down, and we were sitting there and we were like, what are we going to do with the safety position? We had Sidney Brown coming in, making bonehead play after bonehead play on defense and special teams. So he was costing you in 2 different facets of the game. And then Marcus Epps came in, and he became this like really settling presence for the defense, especially at the safety position where, like you alluded to, we lost CJGJ. Andrew Makuba for the first 6, we right up until almost a bye week was kind of struggling with getting his feet under him here at the NFL level versus a college level. Then he started getting going, and then of course Sidney Brown made the bonehead play that caused the Andrew Makuba injury when he basically tackled Makuba. Q's been amazing. Coop's been amazing. Bond, like you said, like we've said for the past, 2 weeks now, Bond may not be at the level that he was last year, but that's because he had such a meteoric season, and then our expectations went even higher for a guy who had a season that he really had no business in having in the first place. So I think the expectations were just sky high. And like you said, is the defense the same as good of a defense as last year? I mean, you can argue there's facets of it that definitely aren't, and it took a while to get going, obviously, because a lot of the turnover. But since the bye week, this defense has been absolutely amazing. If this was a defense we had seen since week 1, this defense would have been better than last year's defense. But unfortunately, it took a while to get here.
Since they've gotten Jalen Phillips, they lead the league in points allowed at like under 15, about 14.5 points a game. So it just took, kind of the defense to gel together and to add a couple pieces. It also helped getting Nolan Smith back, and I think Brandon Graham doesn't play a lot, but just getting his veteran leadership in there, just words of wisdom that he can provide to the young guys, it helps. And you can see it. I don't think Nolan Smith's going to be out. Like, I think they're going to find a way to bring him back. They always prioritize guys that they draft. And obviously he hasn't had the season that they anticipated him having, but I do think that he'll be back. Nakobe is the tough one, only because they have Jahad Campbell, and they took Campbell with the first round pick. I love Nakobe Dean. Like, I would find a way to bring him back, but I don't know. And Jalen Phillips, I think, they made that trade with the thoughts that they'll be able to get a comp pick for him. So if there's going to be an odd man out, it's probably going to be him, but we have to think about it. Right now, all the money is on the offensive side of the ball. That's the highest paid offense in, I think, NFL history. And the Eagles' defense is like the lowest paid this year. It's going to flip, obviously. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, they're all going to have to get paid. And who knows, maybe even Nolan Smith and Nakobe Dean. So that's where, like, we're going to see a change in where money is allocated on this defense, on this team. So that's going to be be the interesting part. But like, Jalen Hunt last year in the second half of the season, he made that jump in the playoffs, doing the exact same this year. He's all over the field. Cooper DeJean had a career high 9 tackles all over the field. And that play that he made, I know it didn't count, but pushing the offensive lineman out the way to get a potential to pick up a potential fumble. That's a heads up play for a second year guy. Like, how many people would have thought that he would have just tried to dive? A lot of people would have just tried to dive after the football. He's like, no, I'm gonna throw this guy out the way first and then have a clear path to the football. That was an awesome play. Jahad Campbell running 30 yards to pick up a fumble. Just, this team is very physical, very fast, and they're playing like their hair's on fire. Like, they have a mission and they're going to accomplish the mission no matter what.
Yeah, I know. I think I was watching Get Up this morning just because sometimes you got to pick random shows to watch, and they were actually talking about, last episode we were talking about how do you scheme for Josh Allen? Can you scheme for Josh Allen? And it feels like Vic Fangio had a scheme. He had some ideas that were going to work. And one of the ideas, they called it out on the show, was they boxed Josh Allen in. So they would push him to one side of the field, and then you'd have 2 defenders in front of him, and then you'd have kind of like a defender on the side, and he'd have nowhere to go. And they showed a couple of occasions where they did this to Josh Allen. And looking back at it, I'm like, damn, like, that's impressive by Vic Fangio, because on the last episode we were saying, can you really scheme to beat Josh Allen? Because once he gets out of his, when he gets off rhythm, he can do a lot of special things. But I do understand you're probably going to go the route of, but he's banged up, and clearly it didn't look like you could tell he was not 100%.
Definitely, like, he did run a couple of times, but like, maybe it would have been different with 100% Josh Allen, but we're at a point in the season where nobody's 100%. He did roll up his ankle on one of the sacks, I think, by Mauro Jomo. And they got 5 sacks on him too. Like, that's like a great job by the defense, obviously. But
And I mean, I think it speaks volumes still that, maybe you're not getting 100% Josh Allen, but whatever amount of Josh Allen you're getting, you're able to scheme something that stops him and doesn't make him the viable option that he usually is. Because even a 50% Josh Allen is better than most teams' 100% quarterbacks that they're getting. So the fact that you're able to find a way to scheme to his injury, scheme to the situation and the issues at hand that have plagued the Buffalo Bills over the last little while, and basically leaning into Josh Allen and James Cook all this season, not really having viable receiving weapons. I think that's a major plus for Vic Fangio, because we probably weren't giving Vic Fangio enough credit on our preview episode for what we ended up seeing on Sunday night. And of course, weather played an impact. Josh Allen injury impact played a role in it, but there were some defensive players who just had massive games. And when he got out of the pocket, Josh Allen was just not able to do a whole lot of anything.
And the Eagles' run defense deserves a lot of credit. Like, the Bills are the number 1 rushing team in the league. James Cook leads the league in rushing. He only had 74 yards rushing. Josh Allen had 27. Ty Johnson had 15. As a team, they had 120, but that's like well below their season average. So this defense deserves a world of credit for what they were able to do against this Bills offense. Brandon Cooks kind of came out of it, like, going back to his old, his younger days, had over 100 yards receiving. There were some, I think the Shavers catch late, it looked like it hit the ground, but, the Eagles didn't challenge it. The Bills were able to get up, something that the Eagles weren't able to do on the Devontae Smith catch, get up to, because the Eagles always take freaking forever to snap the ball. Every time it seems like they're snapping it as the play clock is expiring. It bothers me. That's going to be something that we'll talk about when we get to the offensive side of the ball. I can't stand it anymore. And I said it before, and I say it again. It's Patullo's fault, but we'll get there to that.
And to be honest, on the Shavers catch, I wanted to see a backside camera angle, and so far I've yet to They should, but even like a really like backside, like behind the play, because I think that would have showed that the ball would have moved, and I don't really think that there's a camera angle out there that really shows move,
Well,
because
so
even
it's
Dean
also funny
Blandino
to think
said
about,
that
but think about it. They didn't show that, and when Jalen Hurts got hit late, got hit when he was out of bounds on the sideline, they didn't show the replay for that. It was definitely fishy.
Yeah, and Dean Blandino even said on the Devontae Smith catch, there wasn't you had to go with what you called. If you called that incomplete, that was incomplete. If you called it complete, you had to hold that it was complete. And again, you're going to go into the offseason with, because this is like this is what, like at least 10 catches in Eagles games alone that we've ended up having a discussion about. So imagine all the other 31 teams and how many times they've had to question, well, what is a catch and how are you going to fix and deal with what is a catch? Because this has been an issue now, trying to figure out what's a catch, what's a play, what's a football move after the play. And to me, to be completely honest, I think that both of those catches could have been catches, probably should have been catches, because I don't feel that there was an angle on the Shavers catch that truly showed, unless it didn't end up going to review, but unless New York had an angle that we didn't have, then I really feel like we
You broke up. You were broke up a little bit.
Sorry, am I still around?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, but I still think there wasn't a definitive angle on the Shavers catch where there might have been more for Devontae Smith going to New York and stuff.
Angle,
but I think both could have been catches.
I saw an angle where the ball did hit the ground. It was moving more than Devontae's was moving. The Eagles could have challenged it, and they most likely would have won it. And like the refs were really bad because they called it a PI on cue, but they didn't call the PI on the deep pass to AJ Brown when his arm was being held. So like they were really, really bad. It was very frustrating. Like that they were so inconsistent. But again, the defense the defense doesn't allow any of that to bother them. They go out there and just play physical. And you could see that, having Jalen Carter back and him not playing the last 3 weeks and him having like that time off, he looked like a way better player than he did earlier this year. And that's also which we'll talk about later this week, also my reasoning for why I wouldn't play anybody this Sunday against Washington. Give them the bye week. Most likely now everybody won't get healthy or won't get 100%, but just being off their legs, off the field, not being in car crashes for 60 minutes will help them, kind of just get refreshed going into the wild card game. But that's a story. That's something we'll talk about later this week.
Before we move on, just hit on a couple of these comments. A big country coming on strong. Nolan needs a good playoff, or he's the odd man out, in my opinion. I mean, LJ kind of gave his opinion. I kind of gave my opinion. I kind of am of the belief with big country. At the end of the day, Jalen Phillips gives you a comp pick. Nolan Smith is going to give you a comp pick potentially too. But Nolan Smith, this is a year that you make the decision. Do you extend him, or do you pick up his option and make him play on the option, which is going to be a pretty expensive option? So that's definitely on him and it's going to be like it's going to be like Jordan Davis. They're going to say, I don't know if we've seen enough from you, Nolan. Show us some more. And look, Jordan Davis earned himself a payday. So maybe Nolan Smith's going to go there and earn himself another payday. Hilltime Sports says, go Birds, welcome aboard. Adams Exploits says, hello, gentlemen, welcome aboard. We'll get to his next comment. He agrees about Cam Jurgens. There's a comment further above. We'll hit on Cam Jurgens. Hilltime Sports, get in on the sentiment we've been on for a while. This is why I don't watch legacy media. I do read articles and make my own opinions based on what I watch. Totally fair.
And that's one big reason why I don't throw like stat. I use the eye test. I watch, and that's how I kind of go with what I feel. I don't care about what like all these different stats say. My eyes can tell me the same thing, or like stats can be very, very deceiving. So I just go with the eye test.
look at the MVP race as is. I mean, there's a graphic out there, I think it was on from the Pat McAfee show, where they literally show Drake May and Matt Stafford are literally pound for pound. One stat goes one way, one stat goes the other way. The biggest difference, Drake May's playing with the 32nd strength of schedule. Matt Stafford's playing with the 6th ranked strength of schedule. And that's to me, that's a huge game changer because I mean, let's face it, the Patriots are playing a third in the division schedule, because I think the Jets finished below them last year. So they're playing a third in their division strength schedule. You know that that's going to be a way easier strength of schedule, and that they're going to benefit from that. It's similar to, I'm not discounting the Jacksonville Jaguars, but the Jaguars are playing a lesser schedule based on where they finished last year as well. That just so happens to be the way it goes, and you can only play what's in front of you. But I do think strength of schedule probably needs to be taken into account, because that's how statistics, like you said, can be skewed. If you're playing the hardest strength of schedule and putting up numbers that are comparable to a guy who's playing the 32nd strength of schedule, the statistics aren't fair and even on both sides.
Yeah, and that's why, like, you can't just go straight with with the statistics, but then some people do that, and whatever. Let's jump over to the offensive side of the ball for the Eagles. They look good. I mentioned before, they look good in the first half. Second half, obviously, for the second time this year, Jalen completed 0 passes, but the Eagles also won. The first time since 1987 that's happened to a team.
That stat is crazy. I put it up on X. Born. I don't know. I
was born in 1987, by the way. So
I put it on our X. I was like, I cannot believe. I was like, what is one more crazy? The fact that a stat like this even has to exist, or the fact that the Eagles have won both of these games while completing 0 passes in the second. It's insane.
You can also, and again, disgusting. This is where I use the eye test. Like the Devontae Smith, that was a catch, but they called it incomplete. AJ Brown had his arm held. He almost.
It's not on Jalen Hurts.
It's not. I know where you're going. Hurts. Also, so Kevin Patullo had his media availability today, and somebody asked him about the running game, which, again, the Bills one of the worst run defenses in the league, but I've made the Eagles the Eagles made them look like one of the best, only having like 82 yards rushing. But they stacked the box. There was like 9-10 guys in the box, and the Eagles still ran into it. And somebody asked Patullo about that, and he goes, sometimes we run it just to run it. What? That makes no sense whatsoever. Like, you see that they're stacking the box. Give your quarterback the ability to call out of it. Because why would you keep doing that? Do you keep running into a brick wall if it's right there in front of you? No, you're going to go around it, throw over it, do something. But like, when I heard that comment, I saw that, I can't believe it. This guy cannot be the offensive coordinator next year. It just can't happen.
His and Nick Sirianni's media availabilities are an absolute waste of time. They talk circles. First of all, Patullo took notes from the Sirianni, media speak playbook. Nick Sirianni, you get nothing out of him with the media. But first of all, I want to point out the fact that he's not giving away what they're going to do with their starters is smart by Nick Sirianni. That's keeping a competitive advantage in your back pocket. He always plays
the competitive advantage.
Exactly, but it makes sense. Why are you going to open the door for the Commanders, who already have a chip on their shoulder, who already would love to see the starters out there and go after them? Why would you give them any advantage to prepare for that? Of course, that's stupid. WIP asking that question is absolutely boneheaded and ridiculous. You know exactly where that answer is going. But Kevin Patullo's media availability, I saw so many quotes from reporters who were in the room. It is a joke. It is disgusting what he says. Like, when he was asked about the second half offense, and the whole paragraph that I read, that I think it was Zach Berman who put out the entire paragraph of his answer, it was just talking BS. Let's just face it. Let's call it what it is. Your play calling is terrible. You can't figure it out. You can't get out of your own way. And I know that you're not, obviously he's not going to admit it, but
Oh, Connor.
Sirianni continues to stand by it, I think we've reached a point in the season where you. Oh, I think we've reached a point in the season where you have to literally accept that he has to be the offensive coordinator for the rest of the season. The move had to be made, 3 or 4 weeks ago to move on from Kevin Patullo, and he wasn't able to do it, and he stood by him, and it's a shame. But his media availability is an absolute joke. It's so frustrating to listen to because, just like you said, the eye test is so simple and speaks volumes, and Sirianni doesn't want to see it, and Patullo, I honestly don't think sees it.
No, and and I mentioned it earlier, it happens time and time again where they're getting to the line of scrimmage so late, and the ball is being snapped as the play clock is hitting 0, and that gives the defensive line advantage because if they can just jump, because if it's not snapped, it's a delay of game. They're not going to be called for offsides. And you look at it and you see that the offensive line, all 5 guys are pointing. It's like they need to find a way to simplify it. I don't know how they'll do how they can do that, but it can't just be like all 5 guys are calling. No, let one guy call it out. Let's get to the line. And let's go. Like if they were able to get to the line quick, maybe that Devontae Smith catch stands. But they get to the line and then they got to call the play out and everybody's got to move around. No, that's why the Shavers catch stood, because the Bills got to the line, called a play, or had a play ready, ran it before the Eagles had a chance to look at a replay. So I don't know how. And again, I mentioned it. I've mentioned it all season, but Kevin Patullo doesn't think plays ahead. He calls a play, waits for the outcome, and then it goes, okay, what do I want to call here? No, you need to be 2, 3, 4 plays ahead and just be ready to go with a call. And he's not doing that right now, and it's so frustrating. I get you mentioned he's going to be the offensive coordinator the rest of this year. This is the issue with your head coach not being a good offensive coordinator or being good at calling plays, because then we wouldn't have to worry about this every time a Shane Steichen or a Kellen Moore leave. But now we have to sit here and try to get a Vic Fangio type on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't know if that's going to happen.
But they don't really exist. That's the issue. They're hard to come by because
teams
they
like
want
to hire
head coaching jobs.
Guys. Well, and teams like to hire, for the most part, offensive guys. I know Mike McDonald and D'Amico Ryans. There are those few defensive guys out that are doing a really good job out there. But if you have an offensive mind, and you're an offensive coordinator, your offense, your team wins games, your offense, it does stuff, you're going to get an interview, and you most likely are going to get hired.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the most frustrating part was in his media availability. He spoke to, it comes back to in the second half, first and second down and not putting ourselves in a better spot for third down. How many times did you see him run on first down, 1st and 10, became second and 11 through 15, and they ran it again on second down? That's 100% on you. It was every drive. That's 100% on him.
It seemed like the Eagles got up 13-0, and they were like, all right, let's kill the clock. Let's try to just milk it away. And it doesn't work when, in the second half, you're having a minute long possessions. It does not work. You'll run it on first down and then throw it on second down, or you'll throw it on a short pass on first down, it's incomplete, run it right into a box, a loaded box on second down, and it's third and long. You're always behind the sticks. That's why the Eagles are one of the, when it comes to third down, have the longest yardage to go in the league, because they're predictable, and B, they just don't change things up at all.
Of the 5 drives in the second half, besides the end of game drive, obviously, 3 of them were less than 2 minutes in duration. 2 of them were less than 3 minutes in duration. You never got over 3 minutes in duration on any drive. You cannot sit there and be conservative in nature and say, we're going to run this clock down, when I can't even think of how many drives in the second half we've had that have exceeded 3 minutes. There's not that many of them through the entire season. That's the worst part of it. Big Country says, I haven't been this frustrated with a team in a long time, and they've won 11 games.
2023. We were 10-1 at one point, and they weren't having fun.
No, and I agree. And I agree. And the difference is we never. I guess we hit a bit of a slide this year when we lost 3 in a row, but otherwise we haven't really hit like a significant slide where like we went from 10-1 to a massive slide this year. But we've just been frustrated because we get the lead and we just leave it to the defense and we try and sit on it. And come the playoffs, look at the game last night. As an example, look at the 49ers and the Bears the night before. You aren't going to keep up with those teams.
Well, their defenses aren't as good as the Eagles' defense.
They're not as good. I agree, but if they're going to go out on a regular night and put it against a middle of the road defense and put up 40 points, they can probably go out there and put up 21 on us. Do you think our offense can put up 21 on any defense on any given day?
I honestly don't know if they can put up 21 on us. I am that invested in this defense. I am that confident in this defense that they can hold anybody to 17 or fewer. Like it's going to be tough I get it. The Bears did it. Bears only scored what, 24 on us? I don't remember what the score I have written down here. The Bears scored 24 on us, and we had the worst game we've had in a long time. Like, it's going to take a lot for teams to put points on this defense. If the Eagles' offense can be average, I'm not asking for it to be good. I'm asking for it to be average, maybe even a little below average. They can it's going to be tough for teams to beat us. So again, the Niners put up all this point. They also have one of the easiest schedules in football.
Of course,
the Bears don't have that playoff experience. I don't fear going to Chicago. That's why I don't care about the second or third seed thing, because I think the Packers can beat the Bears. I honestly think that can happen in Wild Card Weekend. And so we'll talk about that later this week. But that's why I'm not playing anybody. And Tanner McKee and Tank Bigsby and Darius Cooper, they can beat this Washington team. I'm not trying to put the starters out there after that comment that Quinn made, and with Frankie cheap shot Louvu out there, but we'll talk about that later this week. The one thing I did want to mention,
Adam's exploit says they aren't holding the Bears or Rams at 40, but I'm on the side of Adam's exploits too, because it depends on the drives. If you can sustain a couple drives and give this defense some rest, I think they could do it. But to the same point, in this past game, we had 9 drives, and we had 2 drives that went for more than 3 minutes. It's just not feasible to believe that this offense can give you any type of sustainable drives. When they put points up, they put them up too fast. That's even an issue for this offense. When they are putting up points, they're putting them up in a drive. Like the touchdown drive, we had 7 plays, 45 yards, 3.5 minutes. That was all it took for them to do a touchdown drive. That was it. And then the field goal drive was 5 minutes and 54 seconds.
Tries to get big plays, and they need to find a way to sustain drives, and right now they're not able to do it. Big Country did bring something up earlier about the offensive line. The frustration for me has been Cam Jurgens. His drop-off has been crazy. Maybe move him to guard and try and get Tyler Lindenblom. He's not leaving Baltimore. That's not happening. But maybe Willie Lampkin. He's a center. They could potentially try that in the offseason. But I don't know how Jurgens made the Pro Bowl team. That should not have happened. I have zero idea how that happened. He got very lucky to make it, but it does seem like every time Saquon gets the ball, he has to make a move. He had to in the Washington game when he had that big 40-yard run. There was a play that Jurgens missed. I forget who the D tackle is, but missed the D tackle completely, whiffed on him, and Saquon had to cut or spin to the left, and he ended up gaining nothing. The O-line has to play better. Also a reason why they should be off their feet this week too. Dickerson's beat up. Mailata's beat up. Jurgens is beat up. Lane Johnson won't play. Fred Johnson, Tyler Steen can play. Sure. Let them play on Sunday. But those other 3 guys, don't even show up to the stadium. They need to be relaxed and you don't know what a world of how much a 2 weeks off or having 14 days in between games could feel. Yeah, you're practicing, but you're really not going that hard in practice nowadays in this soft world of the NFL. But just not having to be out there against Deron Payne and all the guys that Washington has. Like, just that's why I'm again, we'll talk about it later this week. That's why I'm the believe just don't play anybody. Let these guys rely. You have to build your own bye week. So if you remember in 2023, we played that last game at MetLife. AJ Brown got hurt. We were in a spiral, but they looked terrible in Tampa. Last year, last game of the year, bye week, everybody wanted Saquon to play to go for the record. They didn't. They went on a run and won the Super Bowl. Like we see it. There's proof that if you kind of build your own bye week, since you don't have one, you can make a run. And that's what I think is going to happen this week. But yeah, like the offensive line just needs to play better. Like it's simple. It's a lot easier said than done, but it's that simple. The offensive line can play better. The running game will be better. I also think they didn't run Jalen on Sunday. Jalen will run in the playoffs. Like Jalen will help the running game because now defensive ends have to hold for half a second, and that can open up lanes for Saquon and Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think one of the things, when talking about what are they holding back for the playoffs that they may not be showing right now, it's 100% Jalen Hurts in the running game. If there's a time that he's more than willing to probably go out there and sacrifice his body, he's like, I don't really want to in 17 quote unquote meaningless games, get into the playoffs and then go and play and put your body on the line when it matters the most. I mean, I can see it for Jalen Hurts in that situation. I think that it's vitally important. We've seen how much the run and attack changes when Jalen Hurts starts moving, when Jalen Hurts comes out of the pocket, and when he uses his legs and puts that completely different element. Because then you open up that third element of an offense that an offense has to pay attention to and respect. And we've seen it in why Josh Allen has been so successful and continues to be so successful in most cases for the Buffalo Bills is that whole added element. But I agree with you, the offensive line play has been terrible. It needs to be better. We don't know, and we will never know how much of it is likely to do with injuries. I've still been of the belief, and I've stood by it through this whole season, that Cam Jurgens did not get to 100% from that back injury and surgery that he had. And then he came out there and he's probably made it worse. Whatever healing he did, probably it got worse. And then Landon Dickerson, I think putting him out there week 1 was a mistake. I think he needed to have the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season off so that he could be probably 100% for most of this season, because he's been on almost every injury report since he came back week 1 when he said, I'm going to come back, or the team said, you're coming back. We need you. And then obviously for the rest of them, Steen is Steen. Mailata is Mailata. I don't think that it's injury issues with them. I think Mailata's when at least 2 facets of your offensive line are not doing well, and let's talk, Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson, who are immediately to the right, Jordan Mailata, it's going to make Jordan Mailata's day and job a lot more difficult as well. Not to say he's just not having a bad season himself, because he's whiffing on a lot of edges and missing on a lot of edges where he normally would get them. So this offensive line's an issue, and genuine regression of these players is a real question.
You did freeze up a little bit there, Connor, but yeah, I think this is Adam's exploits. He does ask, it's week 18. When is the offense going to get better? Look, the offense is what it is, but Jalen being more of a runner will help the offense. It can make a difference in the running game, which could also open up the passing game a little bit. So look, I'm not saying they're going to go out there in the playoffs and average 30 points, put 55 points up like they did against Washington in the NFC Championship game, or 40 points like they did against Kansas City in the Super Bowl. That won't happen. But I think that Jalen just being more involved, in the run, and I think being more assertive. It's obvious they told him don't get hurt this year. So if you see somebody come and get down, I think that I'm not going to say he's going to lower his shoulder every time, but we're going to see a little bit more physical Jalen when it comes to the running game. So yeah, like that's how I think that's what I think we'll see in a couple of weeks. Whoever the first playoff opponent is going to be, whether it's San Francisco, whether it's the Rams, whether it's the Packers, whoever it is, wherever we land, you're going to see a different Jalen, I think, and a more, and because we know how Jalen is, like when it gets to that playoff time, he's going to be a little bit more assertive. The offense is what it is, especially with who's calling plays. But you're going to see Jalen kind of take a little bit more of a lead potentially.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, putting them out there week 18, if they were going to figure anything out, we were going to see it figured out by now. And the 2 games that we thought they figured some things out in, they regressed back to the mean against Buffalo Bills, against a genuine competitive opponent. So we can chalk that up to they figured things out against, the Raiders and the Commanders, who were opponents that they should have figured things out against. And then they regressed right back to where they were supposed to be, forcing your starters out there. And I get it. I see a lot of posts about how important it would be to get to the 2 seed and having as many games run through the link as possible. But I'm of the ilk that it's almost a meaningless week 18 game. I don't necessarily believe it matters all that much.
It is a meaningless week 18 game.
I think the
backups can beat Washington. I'm not going to, in Detroit, like, I don't know if they're going to mail it in, but they have to go to Chicago. It's going to be cold as hell in Chicago. They're ready to go away. Like, it wouldn't shock me.
I don't know if a Dan Campbell team's going to mail it in. Like, they play hard for Dan Campbell, and I don't know if they're going to mail it in, especially when they can play spoiler.
Brosmer, whatever the hell his name is, with a chance to go to the playoffs. That team is cooked, obviously. That team has mailed it in. Again, I don't want any of the starters out there with Frankie Louvu on the other side, knowing what he's capable of doing. We can't afford to have anybody get suspended for the playoffs. So put Tanner McKee out there, put Tank Bigsby, Darius Cooper, Jahan Dotson, Johnson and Steen, Kendall at center, Pryor and Toth, whoever you want out there. I still think that the Eagles backups could give the Washington starters, and Washington's going to start Josh Johnson. Like, do you think he's going to go out there and score 21 points? Like, the Eagles could probably win this game 14-10, 14-7. That's how, like, I'm prioritizing health, because the Eagles aren't going anywhere with Jalen injured, Saquon injured, AJ, Devontae, Dallas Goedert, any of the starting offensive line. They're not going anywhere if they're not playing. Lane Johnson will be back. Anybody on the defensive side of the ball, if Quinyon gets hurt, Cooper gets hurt, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Zach Baum, like, let's be real. They need everybody. Health over seeding is what matters this week.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Like, health matters the most. I just remember 2023. I remember AJ Brown. I remember that offense looking like a shell of itself. Blame it on Brian Johnson in the 2023 collapse, or look at it as, if we lose any of these guys, it creates a massive hole. It creates a massive gap that you can't just plug somebody into. You're not plugging Jahan Dotson into an AJ Brown role or a Devontae Smith role. You're not just plugging Jacorian Bennett into the Quinyon Mitchell role. It's vital that these guys be healthy. And I agree with you. You're going up against Josh Johnson. You're going up against a Commanders team who probably mailed it in weeks ago. The only thing driving them is that they want our starters so bad, because they want to create a circumstance where they can play dirty. They could get a suspension. They're playing spoiler in a way that isn't playing spoiler, like taking the 2 seed away. They're trying to take somebody away from us for the playoff games. And you could tell by the Dan Quinn mentality based on what he said over a 2-point conversion, which you can argue made sense or didn't make sense.
And also, I think Sirianni gave it away without giving it away, or the team has. Like, when they released Charlie Hewlett, they open up a roster spot for somebody who's out of elevations, and I think that's Andre Sam. So Andre Sam could get playing time. Charlie Hewlett was re-signed to the practice squad. He also talked about, how they kind of just gave them or built in a bye week. So look, we're not going to know probably until Friday or Saturday, or maybe even Sunday when the inactives come out. But we'll talk about, and we'll definitely talk about it later this week, which also gives like trying to predict this game hard as hell. So that should be an interesting conversation.
Sure. I'm predicting
later this week.
I'm predicting as we're playing backups. So that's already the full mentality that I'm going with. And somebody, I can't remember who tweeted it, but somebody was like, if you think that Nick Sirianni is playing the starters with the way that he has played second halves this season, you're out of your mind. And I completely agree. There's no way you play the second halves the way that you've been on offense when you have a lead. And you think Nick Sirianni is going to march starters out there in a week 18.
If Tank Bigsby, AJ Dillon, and Will Shipley get like 75 or however many plays we play, say we have 65 offensive plays. If the Eagles run the ball 50 times, like they're going to try to get out of that game as quickly as possible with no injuries, even if it is to some backup players. If Brett Toth looks good, they should start him over Juergens. I think Drew Kendall would actually start at center personally, and I think Toth would play left guard and Pryor would play left tackle. That's what I think the backup offensive line would be. It would be Pryor, Toth, Kendall, and then Steen and Johnson. For Street and Fred Johnson, I'm leaving out there. They can still get playing time. Steen needs it. I mean, everybody kind of needs it, but the other three guys are beat up, like really beat up. They played it up in late February, and then don't want any of those defensive guys out there. Let them just chill. Like they've been on their feet.
They've earned it. Those defensive players have absolutely earned it.
Toth isn't going to play center on Sunday. I think Drew Kendall would play center on Sunday. So you won't really know how Toth is at center compared to Juergens. And I agree. Juergens has sucked.
Brett Eclipse, listen to the way you're talking about our Pro Bowl center. Relax. Cam Juergens is playing in the playoffs.
He's going to play, but he should not have made the Pro Bowl. I will say that. So we'll be back later this week to get you set for the final regular season game. It'll be Thursday or Friday. Want to wish everybody a happy New Year. Stay safe tomorrow night. You know how crazy that it can get going into the new year. So we appreciate everybody that joins us on a weekly basis, a couple of times a week. You guys help make this hour go by very quickly. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHurrell54. Follow the Eagles Pinpull Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pinpull Network. We will be back later this week to get you set for the final game of the regular season, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.